This is Johnny Blue Star. Welcome to Threshold, a global media event. And now, next Saturday, Threshold presents Dr. Hugo Rodier, MD, practicing the revolutionary new science of nutrition. Join Threshold Radio next Saturday, September 19th, as Dr. Hugo Rodier, a board-certified medical practitioner, takes us on a vital, life-altering journey through a new era in medical research and its incredible consequences for our health. Learn how new research in cellular metabolism reveals the hidden dangers in our food that have led to a virtual explosion in diabetes and obesity and many other life-threatening conditions, which has put our entire nation at risk. Find out why muffling our symptoms with pharmaceuticals is a poor substitute for the powerful health solutions inherent in a wholesome, sensible diet grounded in a true knowledge of cellular metabolism and the nutrients that can powerfully support it. Join us on Saturday, September 19th, 2015, as Dr. Hugo Rodier shows us the fastest highway to extraordinary health may lie in your kitchen cabinets and refrigerator, with foods carefully selected by an understanding of the new revolutionary science of nutrition.
This is Vegas All Net Radio, the final frontier of free speech.
Views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Vegas All Net Radio, its affiliates, or its parent company.
This is Johnny Blue Star. Welcome to Threshold, a global media event. Is the universe just a random dance of atoms, or is it a manifestation of a supremely intelligent architect? Can its purpose, or our purpose here on Earth, be adequately assessed? Can we commune with it, know its intentions, cooperate with its direction? Here, we define Threshold as a gateway state of awareness, allowing mankind to cross into a place of real cognition. Threshold allows us to approach questions of higher reality through the door of experience rather than mere belief. Welcome to Threshold, where we tear away the veil from commercial media, bringing our audience and participants into another realm of reality and enhanced communication. Welcome back to Threshold. This is Johnny Blue Star. Today I'm very happy to present Rod Tyler as our guest host. Rod joins us because of his profound interest in this kind of topic that we're going to explore today in Threshold, and the quality of his investigations into spirituality, global, environmental, and political issues, and, if I may add, his sense of humor. Hi, Rod.
Good morning to everyone. It's great to be here.
Today, our program, Threshold, postulates that true understanding comes from a deep and profound connection within ourselves to the source of all things, the creative, intelligent, and profoundly righteous creative power behind all manifestation. Today, we are profoundly grateful to have a medical doctor whose life is a testimony to the possibility of putting spiritual principles foremost in his mind as he tried to find out the foundation of disease and its treatment. We're happy to introduce you to Hugo Rodier, MD. Welcome to Threshold, Doctor.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, you were convinced many years ago in the importance of nutrition in curing disease, much before most people in the medical profession really caught on. What were those days like? And what convinced you to make such a controversial and neglected journey towards understanding and practicing a medical platform largely focused on food and nutrition instead of pharmaceuticals?
Well, great question. It turns out since I was a child, I felt called to spiritual things. I was quite moved by churches. Of course, at the time I was a Catholic boy, and so I thought that I was going to be a priest as a child. I was educated in a Jesuit school, which are quite given to the mysteries, as you know.
Yes.
And so I was tacking along thinking I'm going to be a priest and love God and His creations and all that. But then my hormones hit the fan and kicked in, and I just couldn't do it. So I didn't pursue that path anymore, but I retained my curiosity about the spiritual realm. And you know, if you do that, you begin to sense, you begin to be guided as to where you need to go. I just put myself in the hands of the supreme architect, as you put it, and slowly I began to be led to medicine. I felt at the time in high school and college that a good doctor would be a Renaissance man, a woman, a person well-rounded in all the affairs of life, all the transactions of life, especially the spiritual realm, and then throw in a little science, and there you go, you got the best doctor. So I applied to medical school, having gone through biology, psychology background in college. And, of course, you can imagine what happened then. I was greatly disappointed that doctors at the time, 1980, still today, I should say, were trained to be technicians, nothing more than vending machines to produce pharmaceuticals to treat symptoms, and not addressing the root issues of the problems at all, which, of course, it's obvious to everyone now that the roots of diseases are cellular because of imbalances in nutrition, environment, and relationships. So I figured, I'll just jump through these hoops, get my MD degree, then I'll have a platform from which to do what needs to be done. And I began to study nutrition on my own and environmental issues on my own. It wasn't easy, which is the main point of your question, because it wasn't easy being green back then, like Kermit the Frog or the Hulk,
Right.
Not easy. I was thought to be some burnt-out hippie talking about environmental issues and nutritional issues, even though back then I could find all those things very well documented in good medical journals, and I began to see that those articles were being suppressed, ignored, and so, but they were there because having been trained scientifically and rationally, I didn't want to open my mouth unless I found good evidence in the journals. In fact, in medical school, I made it a habit to study from journals, not textbooks, and so I was pretty cutting edge at the time in the early 80s. Quoting references from the best of journals that we should address nutritional, environmental, and spiritual issues to heal people. And of course, as you said in the body of your question, everybody's caught on by now. It's everywhere, what I've been talking about. So there's been a transition. Some people would call me a quack back then. Now I'm being asked to speak all over the country and the world and write books, and it's not me. Like I said at the beginning, I feel that I've been guided. I placed myself in the hands of the supreme architect, and to wrap it up, I think the best way for your audience to understand what the medicine that needs to be practiced is hermetic health. And that's the title of my 5th book, which will come out next year.
I'd like to read you from another book, and I don't know if you'll recognize the author, but I thought this book is really appropriate to the advances we're experiencing today. Tell me if you recognize it. Earlier myths and legends have survived to be told in our modern days, uniformly depict the whole universe as made of the same material, ether, which was they called it then. Despite different languages and cultures, we may now interpret their intuitive insights to mean that our whole universe is nothing but energy and information, from now on denoted as E and I. Even the most ancient of philosophies and religions seem to agree spiritual realms were and still are seen as all-encompassing. The material world is nothing but a coarser fabric that is born from the unseen world of spirits. The Hermetic concept of as above, so is below made no distinction between different disciplines when societies were young. Ancients felt that everything, including themselves and their deities, were an integral part of the fabric of reality. They believed they were one with the whole spectrum of nature. As such, their world was intensely spiritual and physical at the same time. As such, but gradually, these profound insights for economic, political, and religious reasons went underground, lost but to the most esoteric and mystical segments of practically all societies on Earth. And here are the really important things. It was not long before the falling away from a world where people lived with the gods was complete. Humanity slowly descended into a world where physical sciences are divorced from spirituality or that which is not seen. Medieval thinking retained some vestiges of this primordial union between the physical and the spiritual, only to have such unscientific ideas ridiculed by Renaissance scientists. How ironic that a second Renaissance of sorts is dawning upon us now. We are discovering the unity of all things. Overcorrection from Middle Ages spiritualism towards heartless science is being questioned by those who are open to spiritual and emotional enlightenment without abandoning their training in science. They are increasingly discovering new insights into the universe and everything therein. Do you recognize those words?
Well, whoever wrote them, I think they know what's going on. I think I wrote that.
So the audience is somewhat enlightened. This is from a book that, despite the grandiosity of the vision, is actually called Gut Health. And it's about health, bringing the whole spectrum of of an understanding of the nature of things to this terrible problem that America is facing today.
Well, thank you. I got to tell you, those words, I don't think they're mine. I wrote them, but like I said, we're all one big, gigantic consciousness, and it doesn't matter what we call it. And I just feel that our egos get in the way, and I've tried to be conscious of that. I can't say I succeed, but just a little awareness is enough to feel that those words are not mine.
When Leonard Cohen, the singer, songwriter, accepted an award from the Prince of Asturias in Spain, that's what he said. He said, I'm glad to accept these words, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm kind of a custodian of them because they're not coming from some low place within myself, my ego, even my conscious awareness. They're coming from something higher, something that knows much more than my conscious mind does, because I'm a poet. But I think that goes for philosophers and for scientists and for everyone else who gets in touch with that other realm.
Absolutely. I wrote a fiction book, The Fence, in one night, trying to publish that book. And I tell you, it was like I was possessed. I just sat and wrote, and I think it's very humbling to be part of this. And you lose so much by taking credit, so I think you know what I mean.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, right now, I'm going to play a short clip of a song that Ian Edgar Ahrens, who's a Russian composer, wrote, and it's sung by Patricia Welch. And it's sort of about, it's something that definitely, the lyrics to this song, for me, came from a higher place. But if we could, we're going to take a little break and hear the song and a few ads and get right back on track.
Silver above. Boots in Manhattan is a coming-of-age novel by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. It is about a young Tom Boots Raymond who grows up in New York in the 1940s who was a member of a street gang.
My friends and I were about to start our own game of stickball when Rabbit Lacey, the head of the Rattlers, came up to us and tried to move in on our game. We were called dwarves, the youngest members of the stupid gang.
Hey, Kevin, I need you to get some gloves and some stuff I left at my place.
No, this is our game.
Hey, are you my good little dwarf or what?
You've been calling me a dwarf since I was 6. We're not your personal slaves, pal.
Hey, what is this? A dwarf rebellion? All right, big guy, we ditched the dwarf thing. We make you guys regular rattlers.
No, it's too late.
He looked at Jay and me. We looked away. Rabbit was now angry, and he pushed Kevin hard with the palms of his hand. Kevin tried to ram him in the stomach, but he stepped aside, throwing Kevin into the curb where he fell to the ground, bleeding profusely at the knee. Still, he managed to get up.
My street.
Kevin shouted at Rabbit, pointing at him with an angry index finger.
Find out more by Googling Boots in Manhattan, a 1940s coming-of-age novel, part 1 of the novel series The Foot Soldier by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle. That's Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle.
Nowadays, if you are a serious business person, just getting assistance from someone with a license and a bit of experience may not be sufficient. In fact, your realtor actually needs to be knowledgeable enough to be one of your top advisors. Whether you are facilitating a giant merger or selling your company, there's a lot at stake besides your finances. There is the future value of your current investment, financial freedom, integrity, and overall reputation. If you need this kind of assistance, Sandra LaFlamme is a real estate expert with the experience, reputation, and knowledge qualified to assist you in all your key transactions. Sandra LaFlamme, real estate services with integrity and conscience. Contact her today at 888-366-8070. That's Sandra LaFlamme at 888-366-8070. Before getting into some of the critical issues of health that so many of our audience are interested in, I think it's important that you begin by explaining some of the fundamentals of your research that we indicated a little bit in our reading in the last segment. I love the health lesson that's available at your website, where you talk about some fundamental concepts that inform metabolic disorders and their cure. But also, as in the discussion we had before, touch on the nature of life in the universe. So perhaps, Doctor, you could explain briefly about the physics that lie as a critical substratum beneath the biology of cells, and why an understanding of this physics can impact so heavily on treating metabolic disorders.
Sure. Let me start from the very beginning. And I mean the very beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. As above, so below. So the ancients understood this, and they called it Hermetism. And keep in mind that Hermes, or Thoth, is carrying the caduceus, the symbol of the medical profession, is the very essence of what I'm going to say. So picture in your mind the caduceus, 2 serpents around a central staff, a winged staff. And so the ancients symbolized very important physics, corroborated physics, modern physics saying the same thing with the caduceus. And so even the Torah and the Kabbalah will tell you the same things. Of course, these are ancient Hindu ideas. But the core of the matter is that God uttered 2 words. God, being one, uttered 2 words, which became 3. And this is highly geometric. But in essence, light being energy and information, those 2 words, formed everything. And this is why the ancients revered nature, the cycles of nature, creation, destruction, spring, summer, fall, winter. Their crops, their very lives depended upon an understanding of very, very basic physics of reality. And so they began to see that the sun coming and going, resurrecting and coming and going, was the very life, that the very essence of their lives. So people get all mixed up and begin to worship these symbols instead of the supreme architect or that consciousness behind all these issues. And so it turns out that energy and information formed everything, and I mean the energy and information of the sun. Light is energy and information, including solar energy. Their crops, our plants, harness all that energy and information to where eating food becomes a sacred ritual of incorporated parts of that consciousness or energy and information into our own cells. Our 50 trillion cells cannot work properly nor be constructed properly unless we're getting the right energy and information from the sun, from the plants we eat. And this also this also applies to the energy and information that enlightens our understanding, our thinking, our souls. It's the same. It's all one big soup. And so I'm talking about the same thing. Think of oatmeal. It's all one big bowl of oatmeal, but it might be lumpy. And so for one lump of oatmeal to say to another, well, we're different, it's madness, as you can imagine. And so as our 50 trillion cells get the proper energy and information from food, they can now be fueled properly and do whatever it is they're assigned to do. So a lung cell, a heart cell, a brain cell, they all work the same. Well, they have different functions, but to work, they need the same fuel, the same energy and information. And moderns are now calling all this metabolism. Cells must have the right energy and information to metabolize, to work, just like a combustion engine. The same principles of thermodynamics apply as above, so below, to engines and societies and cities and body cells. And so disease becomes improper fueling, improper energy and information. Of course, the main thing is bad food, but you can throw in there too toxins in the environment, toxic relationships. Now, for disclosure, I must tell you, I'm a Mason. Okay, Masons say the same thing, but as you probably know, Masonry, it's just a search for the common denominator, that perennial philosophy from which all philosophies have sprung. Masons call it strength and wisdom. The pillars of the Kabbalah are strength and wisdom. It's the same as energy and information. And in the center of the Kabbalistic tree, there's a third pillar, balance. It turns out that it's the same with the Kedushas. One snake is strength, the other one is wisdom. One is energy, the other information. And the staff in the middle is balance. Another word for balance is homeostasis. And guess what homeostasis is? Health. Health. And so, all the principles that the fabric of reality, everything that makes the universe, is health, balance. And so, when you start to think that way, eating, relationships, our relationships with others and the environment, the food we eat, are sacred as the same as any church. They're sacred and spiritual the same as any tenet of philosophy you might discuss, salvation, nirvana. And so I'm afraid that our society has not understood all these things. And so processing of food riddled with toxins and preservatives, environments that are causing a lot of diseases, relationships where corporations or other entities take advantage of the public are really immoral in a sense. They're toxic. And I'm afraid that health problems we have, in our bodies cannot be truly understood until we see that they're a reflection of a much bigger imbalance, an imbalance of thinking in our societies where forces such as feminine forces are misunderstood and even attacked and repressed. And that's another way of looking at strength and wisdom, male and female.
Well, Doctor, you were talking about the tree of life, which I think is like the Kabbalistic master paradigm of, or symbolic paradigm of balance, right? Within oneself, as well as
exactly,
as well as in the divine presence, the presence of God itself or Himself, whatever, which is called the Shekinah in Hebrew, and I think this is very much consonant with the teachings of Jesus when He talks in the Lord's Prayer of "as above, so below."
Exactly.
He says, "On earth as it is in heaven," and "as above, so below" comes from, I believe, the Emerald Tablets of Hermes Trismegistus back.
Right.
Who knows when, but it's replicated in and hidden somehow in the teachings that we have right at our disposal, right there, but we misinterpret them.
Exactly. Hermes got around quite a bit. He's known as Thoth in Egypt, Dionysius in Greece, Dionysius in Italy, Hermes in Greece. He's also called Agni in India. He's called Quetzalcoatl in the Americas. So it's highly symbolic, that figure. The ancients spoke in symbols, and the problem is that take the examples you brought up. Of course, I totally agree. The teachings of Jesus are hermetic. He was a disciple of the Essenes, of John the Baptist, who was deeply hermetic. But he had to talk in symbols too, because if you go out and say these things too loud, you get stoned to death. That's a history of hermetic thinkers, quite persecuted. In fact, the First Crusade, which has been totally erased from history, was not against Palestine or Islam. It was against the Cathars in Venetia, in France.
It was a tremendous slaughter of hundreds of thousands of people, I believe. And at the same time, when the Pope at that time was asked, what should we do? Some of these people will be innocent, and he said, well, that's life. We've got to move forward, and we've got to take care of this heresy. So he did, in his own way, and thereby destroyed a very important component of early Christianity. We have to take a break now. We'll be right back and dig much more deeply, not only into the etheric aspect of the cosmos, but right down to the gut. I've worked with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens for quite a few years, building an inventory of songs, many of which feature singer-performer Patricia Welch. We will soon be releasing these songs, components of an album and a musical in progress called Hadley's Castle. When Edgar and I first got together, I was amazed by the brilliance of his musical scores created for movies, TVs, and animations. Here is a sample of the work he did on the Russian TV series, available now on Amazon, called The Secret Agent's Memoir, which had 2 seasons. This score is called Escape and was created for the first season. I am very pleased to say that Bridge of Light Productions, a division of New Galaxy Enterprises, is proud to be the contact point for television and film companies seeking information about this amazing composer's work. If you're in the entertainment business and wish to know more, contact me at johnnybluestar@gmail.com. That's johnnybluestar@gmail.com.
It is the 15th century. El Tesoro de Cielo, a Spanish treasure ship, sends a scouting expedition to a strange island. Golden statues surrounding them prove the enormity of their find. Suddenly, hordes of ghoulish creatures with scaly green flesh and skeletal wings descend upon them from the sky.
What do you think of this, Rufio?
These creatures are fragile, Captain. We can take them with our swords.
They seem supernatural. Who knows what powers they possess?
Fallen angels, weakened by their treason.
My God, are you saying they're Nephilim, the devil's host?
I'm saying, whatever they are, we can take them. Do any of you cowards dare join me?
Up against sharp knife-like nails and hideous fangs, the men's swords rip into slimy green flesh. Though black blood pours copiously from their half-naked bodies, the creatures miraculously persist. Can the crew survive this bloody, cursed battle?
Find out more by Googling The Thrice Born, a new sci-fi supernatural novel by Carlos Lopez Avery and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Carlos Johnny Kindle, The Thrice Born. That's Carlos Johnny Kindle, The Thrice Born.
New Galaxy Enterprises is a media company specializing in wide-ranging content like novels, nonfiction books, screenplays, commercial advertising, web content, etc. One of our most esteemed providers is illustrator Robert W. Zalo. I work on all my most important projects like book covers, logos, web design elements with Robert. As an illustrator, he worked on the Ignatz-nominated comic book, The Expert's Guide to Killing Things That Go Bump in the Night. His skills encompass advertising, magazine illustrations, gaming, comic books, TV production, and scenic painting. His clients include Comcast, Adelphia, Haven Talent, ForceWorks, High Octane Theater, Star Creative Advertising. If you wish to contact Robert, go to johnnybluestar.com and let me know. That's johnnybluestar.com. For artist, illustrator Robert Zalo, an essential component of all the work we do. Maybe he can help you too. Hi, it's Johnny Bluestar coming back to you with Threshold. We're speaking with Dr. Hugo Rodier, who has written this great book called Gut Health, Lighting the Path to Well-Being. And we have, in our first segment, we've really gone sky high and discussed the entire universe. It's and the existence of a sort of sense of cosmic balance there that we need to bring down to this level. And so to get really down to this level, Doctor, let us talk about a subject that has just begun to surface publicly, almost ferociously, called leaky gut. What is leaky gut, and what are the symptoms and conditions that cause it? And how is this related to the big picture? People say it's connected with obesity, diabetes, lupus, and various autoimmune diseases. Is this true? Could you describe leaky gut and ferret out the truth about its reality and its possibility of being an underlying cause of many different diseases?
Well, sure. First, let me tell you about the concept of leaky gut, then I will connect it to the big picture, as you say.
Great.
Leaky gut, the lining of the intestines becoming toxic, oxidized, inflamed, and having less than optimal mitochondrial function. The mitochondria being the cell, the part of the cell where you process energy. Toil, toxicity, oxidation, inflammation, less than optimal mitochondrial function, is acting on all tissues of the body, all cells of the body. The toxins in the environment, lack of antioxidants, the immune system kicking in with inflammation, and the power cells, the power batteries of the cell not functioning well, will disrupt tissues or how cells work to the point that they shrivel up, if you will. Cells that line the intestines, they shrivel up, they become leaky. And when that is happening, and I believe it's quite common, the way we eat and process our food, and et cetera. When you've got leaky gut, toxins from the gut can escape the gut and go everywhere, thereby compounding the toxicity, oxidation, inflammation, and less than optimal mitochondrial function throughout the body, in every cell of the body. Also, the gut itself, the bacteria that lives in the gut, we call it the microbiome, begins to produce inflammation. You see, the gut flora, the microbes you have in your gut, are 2/3 of the immune system, a fact that won the Nobel Prize in 1908. And now, as you well said it, is on the cover issue of the most august journals. Unfortunately, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I began practice, this was quackery. Everyone who maintained that there is such a thing as leaky gut was marginalized. In fact, I still find doctors, colleagues, so misinformed that they tell patients there's nothing of the kind. There is no leaky gut. I tell you, they're not reading their own journals. I think I showed you in my office a cover issue of the journal Gastroenterology last year, the May issue, 2014, Gastroenterology. Picture on the very cover, leaky gut. So that's what leaky gut is. Now let me take it to the next picture. Oh, by the way, you're absolutely right. When you got that going, you can expect all diseases to begin to manifest themselves. Diseases start with faulty processing of energy and information, food, in the gut. Is that basic? And so then you will not be fueling or constructing other cells properly for them to function properly. And so now the big picture. The ancients understood that everything in nature is creation, destruction. Creation, destruction. Spring, summer, fall, winter, etc. So they saw the sun as coming and going, as being created and destroyed. Isis and Osiris, Set fighting in Egypt, the gods, Set finally killing Osiris and chopping him up in pieces, and then resurrecting, of course, same with Dionysius and Pythagoras. So the same old myths or legends were adopted by Christianity as to where how much you build on that is totally up to each religion. But the point is that the cycles of nature were revered as creation destruction. The very origin of all this is Agni and Mithra in Hinduism. The dance of Shiva represents the cycles of creation destruction. The Sumerians called it the Ouroboros. The Ouroboros is a snake eating its own tail. In the circle, there's a dove. It turns out the circle formed by the snake eating its own tail, there's a dove depictured, or a bird. So the symbol of the snake and the dove are symbols of energy and information. The snake being energy and the dove information. So you see where I'm going with this.
Well, you know, I'm thinking that that in terms of this particular condition that we've been just briefly mentioning, leaky gut, I mean, would you say it's reached epidemic proportions?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, let me finish the analogy. It turns out that every day we lose 10 billion cells to make 10 billion new cells from the food we eat. So if you're not eating properly, you're not patching up the leaky gut. And it turns out that we also have leaky arteries, leaky brain, leaky everything. That's just nature, creation, destruction. Every day we die, if you will, a little death, 10 billion cells, to make 10 billion new cells, creation, destruction, creation, destruction. So if we're not fueling up properly with the right foods, then the destruction side of the equation begins to assert itself, and you lose balance. But if you're creating sufficiently well, feeding yourself sufficiently well, then you're in balance. the forces of creation, destruction are unbalanced. So moderns call this metabolism catabolism. And that is yet another inspirational point, if you will, for patients, people to understand how sacred it is to eat the right food.
Doctor, if I may interrupt there, we know that your approach is very diet-oriented, but there are lots of stories out there and lots of different kinds of diets, and even contradictory ideas of what is good for you and what is not. And one popular diet out there is the paleo diet. And I know you have written about it in your blog. What do you think about it? And in general, what do you think about diets as a way to prevent leaky gut? And specifically, I mean, I ask about the paleo diet because it's the one that I'm following. But could you care to expand on this topic?
Sure. You know, the basic problem you are alluding to is misinformation, and I'm afraid that a whole lot of it is planted there by the industrial technology complex, if you will. And so with all the confusion, people are left to eat whatever. They give up. But it turns out that diet and nutrition are quite simple. And once you get the basics of it, all the confusion just dissipates. So specifically, we need to eat foods that harness the most energy and information from the sun, and that is plants. So there's no question whatsoever that the best diets are plant-based. Plant-based. Now, we can eat animal protein. Hopefully the animal has been grown in a healthy way without antibiotics and steroids and hormones, etc. And so, which diet is the best? It turns out that the best diet, there's no question, is an omnivore diet, meaning most of us are genetically accustomed to eating a little bit of animal protein, lots of plants, and grains, okay? But the grains need to be whole grain. Now, the thing with the paleo diet, there's a lot of misinformation about it. It is absolutely true that a segment of the population genetically must eat the paleo diet, which, as you know, is no grains, no legumes, and a lot of animal protein. But you see, specifically, and I can tell you how each diet, even the vegetarian diet, can be flawed. But let's speak of the paleo diet first. You read the blog, so you know what I'm going to say. Basically, the paleo man ate a lot of nuts, a lot of tubers, a lot of fruits, because he wasn't successful every time he went out hunting for that big mammoth. He might come back with a rabbit or two. Great. Paleo man didn't live that long. Now, having said all that, I'm not saying that a paleo diet is a bad diet. No. I'm just saying it's a bit misunderstood, and that if it helps someone real well, and I'm a big advocate of testing to see if processed wheat, might be a problem. Yes.
You know something, Doctor? We're going to have to take a break now, and we'll get back to this really important subject of nutrition and these different diets, and actually your solutions as well as the ones that are out there in the world today. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with Threshold with Dr. Hugo Rodier.
The following is from West Side Warrior, the memoir of Ray Boylan, a Korean War veteran and crime fighter. He was there fighting in the world's coldest battlefield when the Chinese communists invaded.
Desperate squad members ran past our foxhole yelling, "Get the hell out of here, there's too many of them." Again, we saw the Chinese soldiers charging in with opium-induced mindlessness, oblivious of our bullets. Again, we heard the bugles and whistles. Climbing out of our foxhole, Bob dropped 2 hand grenades behind us, and I threw one over my shoulder. Bullets whizzing by our heads, Bob and I became bolts of lightning flashing across the mountainside. Like a hideous film, desperate scenes like this played out on the Tokong Pass for 3 days. Sometimes I played in the scene. Sometimes I could only watch and wonder if it were real, or if I'd be suddenly jolted out of my trance by an RKO usher saying, "Hey, did you kids sneak in here?"
To acquire this book, Google westsidewarrior.boylan.kindle. Boylan is spelled Boylan. That's Westside Warrior, Boylan, Kindle.
This is Johnny Bluestar. I've worked as a lyricist with Patricia Welch for over 5 years, along with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens, a friend and colleague. Her ability as a singer is simply amazing. She brings a unique and dramatic flair to every song she sings. Over the next few months, we shall be releasing a number of these songs, part of an album called Hadley's Castle. Meanwhile, Patricia has been busy creating a super enjoyable collection of classic standards in an exciting 46-song, 3-CD collection.
Music for great entertaining introduces Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia Welch. 3 hours of continuous music. 46 of the all-time classic standards, spanning decades of hit songs. Going to a friend's home for dinner? Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia also makes the perfect hostess gift. This 3-CD compilation is the perfect background music that sets just the right mood for any dinner party.
I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. There was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy.
To purchase this album, just go to patriciawelch.com/CD. That is patriciawelch.com/CD. You won't be disappointed. Perhaps two of the greatest problems affecting people's health in the United States are diabetes and obesity. How do you explain this superabundance of these conditions, and what can we do about it?
Could you repeat?
Yeah, I was talking about two of the greatest problems affecting people's health in the United States, diabetes and obesity, which you call diabesity, I believe.
Yes.
How do you explain why these are so widespread, and what can we do about it?
Oh, okay. Well, I wrote another book about that, Leaking Sweet Death. It's out of print, but I've rewritten it, switching off chronic illnesses. But yes, absolutely. I think it's a political, economic problem and must be viewed from a public health lens, or we're not going to lick this thing. It turns out the most basic problem is that people are addicted to sugar. This has been written up in the best of journals, including the journal Nature. The manipulation of food and information by the food industry and colluding with the government has been on the cover issue of the British Medical Journal and other articles in many other books or magazines and journals. And so it just doesn't do any good to tell kids, even adults, eat your broccoli. Why would they do that? Their taste buds are totally addicted to sugar. Their gut flora, the microbiome, is addicted to sugar. And so you have a violent reaction when you stop eating sugar. I see that all the time. People go through withdrawals, cold turkey. And so the addiction to sugar has been associated or compared to an addiction to tobacco and alcohol and heroin. And so we're talking about a major public health issue. You know, it's like telling an alcoholic, hey, why don't you drink water instead? Really? I mean, you're totally wasting your time. And so to go around, in fact, I can show you articles where all the campaigns for healthy school lunches are failing because to walk in there for a week and tell people, eat your broccoli, kids, eat your broccoli, and then quit and go to some other school, it just doesn't work. So it's a terrible problem. And so I try to work on it from a psychological, spiritual side. When people come in and they're having trouble with their diets, I begin to discuss with them their lives, their stresses. Those are the factors that lead to addiction. Addictions, after all, is a futile attempt to calm down spiritual, emotional issues with chemicals. So bad foods are the same.
You know, you share a case in switching off chronic disease about a woman who reversed her diabetes. Many people think that a diabetes diagnosis means a permanent prescription for insulin forever. Can you briefly, we've only got a couple of minutes left, a minute and a half. Could you just say something about that possibility of resolving these problems of diabetes without insulin?
Well, it's a mixed question. So let me tackle this from the good part first. Okay. Diabetes, non-insulin dependent, is totally reversible, and you can pick it up early. We call it pre-diabetes. Check an A1C level in the blood. It needs to be under 5.7. And so just about everyone, if they eat real well, exercise, take a handful of supplements, diabetes number 2, non-insulin dependent, is certifiable, documented to be reversible.
Thank you so much, Doctor. We will come back at the right after the station break here at 10 o'clock, and we'll be talking more about these incredibly significant health problems we have and your unique way of treating them.
Views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Vegas AllNet Radio, its affiliates, or its parent company.
This is Johnny Bluestar. Welcome to Threshold, a global media event. Is the universe just a random dance of atoms, or is it a manifestation of a supremely intelligent architect? Can its purpose, or our purpose here on Earth, be adequately assessed? Can we commune with it, know its intentions, cooperate with its direction? Here, we define threshold as a gateway state of awareness, allowing mankind to cross into a place of real cognition. Threshold allows us to approach questions of higher reality through the door of experience, rather than mere belief. Welcome to Threshold, where we tear away the veil from commercial media, bringing our audience and participants into another realm of reality and enhanced communication. Well, welcome back to Threshold, everybody. We're talking to Dr. Hugo Rodier about the frontiers of nutrition, medicine, and the application of physics and spirituality to healing. But with all that conversation, let's talk a little bit more about the medical approach that most patients are likely to experience from some of their medical practitioners from time to time. Rod?
Yeah, Doctor, I read in your blog that you say that science is firmly entrenched in an Aristotelian extreme, where ideas that do not fit a certain orthodoxy are marginalized and even excommunicated, quote unquote. Scientists who question the status quo are cut off from funding to pursue their research, fired, and worse, discredited as quacks. That attitude is predominant in clinical practices around the country. In your blog, you tell the story of a patient's sad experience with a medical doctor, a scientist, if you wish. That's how you described it. It's about a patient that went to see the doctor, and the doctor dismissed him from his practice because he refused to take a specific drug. The doctor berated him on his preference for natural therapies. He said, there is no evidence that they work. This is what you wrote in your blog. You wrote that, of course, it is a doctor's right to dismiss a patient from her practice, but the matter did not end there. The doctor wrote in the patient's chart an official document that can have serious consequences on a patient's health care, that the patient was deluded and depressed and needed to be treated with an antidepressant. He added that the patient was arrogant in his belief that he knew more about him, that is, the doctor. What is all this about? Why are doctors, that is, some doctors, so rigid and so authoritarian?
Well, there's a lot there. But let me tell you my first reaction at hearing what I written. I just laugh, I chuckle. I mean, what can you do? I cry. So I don't take any of this seriously. I think it's entertaining that we still see such attitudes from the medical profession. But I can tell you categorically that there are many, many, many good doctors out there who are waking up and don't want anything to do with this paradigm that is very toxic, that is, number one, not communicating forthrightly with the patient and giving the patient the right to express their opinion, refuse, or accept treatment. That's an inalienable right that every patient has. Having said that, I'm afraid that some of those attitudes, as you can see, still are out there, born of sheer ignorance. I mean, what we're talking about, it's written in the best of journals. So it tells me that doctors like that are getting their education, from whom? From Big Pharma, who comes in with very good-looking drug reps to tell them about the latest and greatest drug, which now have names that are totally ridiculous. And then they get an invitation to go to a plush resort to be educated by the pharmaceuticals. So all that was totally predicted by William Osler, the founder of integrative medicine, a Canadian from Canada, or from McGill University. But he predicted when Fleschner, at the turn of the last century, was so hot and heavy about German medicine, which is very scientific. Osler predicted that, okay, all that's well and good, and we need that, true, but we mustn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Medicine is a humanistic, social science, and we mustn't lose track of nutrition, relationships, environmental issues, the soul of man and woman. And I'm afraid that's what we see today. Osler was right. This is in no way to denigrate the scientific approach. I hope that is clear. We need a balance. That's what we're talking about, balance, after all. I'm highly scientific, and nothing I've told you today I have not read in good journals. And so, in fact, last night reading a terrific book, Altered Genes, Twisted Truth, by Mr. Drucker, on how GMO foods are a great example of what we're talking about. First of all, the scientific data was manipulated to convince politicians and other interested groups that GMO foods are safe. And, in fact, the big catastrophe, the big problem with tryptophan, you may recall, tryptophan for a while was demonized, that amino acid that helps you sleep better. high in cashews, by the way.
It was a contaminated batch, right, from Japan.
Exactly. It was contaminated because they used a GMO bacteria to mass-produce tryptophan with toxic consequences. And so tryptophan was blamed in order to hide the evidence that the problem was a GMO bacteria. And from his book, Mr. Drucker's book, Altered Genes, Twisted Truth, I'm going to read you a sentence. This is Eisenhower, page 59. Eisenhower is well known to our circles by that famous speech, and stepping down, he cautioned Americans about the military-industrial complex. Well, in that same speech, Eisenhower goes on to say, he then cautioned, quote, in holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of scientific technological elite, unquote. And what are we talking about? Big pharma, insurance companies, GMO companies, Monsanto, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's what's going on. And then these people blame harmless natural substances like tryptophan, and then we demonize the whole supplement industry and nutritional industry so that the competition against big pharma is minimized, ridiculed. In fact, the very word alternative, which I despise, is pejorative. There's nothing alternative about food, you see. So, we cannot understand these things, health issues, unless we look at the bigger picture, hermetic thinking.
Well, I think that part of the problem here is that this authoritarianism that, is taking place with big pharma, it ripples down into medical education, and it ripples into the research. Billions and billions of dollars are being expended on pharmaceutical research, when what we need is research to the very thing that we're talking about today, research on food, nutrition, cellular metabolism, to try and really understand how we should cure people instead of just mask over their symptoms.
Exactly what drugs do, and all that research, vaunted research, you have hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of articles showing how the evidence is manipulated in 2/3 of research. That the statistics are manipulated to favor the drug they're studying. Of course, if you pay me to run a study on drug X with my patient, and you pay me a lot of money, how likely am I to produce a bad result? Well, it turns out that if I do, that study is likely not to be published. So we have a whole lot of evidence that negative studies saying, say, a drug not working are not published. A great example of that is antidepressants. And look, I'm not saying get off antidepressants and don't take them. There's a certain percentage of people who should be on them. But I assure you, the vast majority of people on antidepressants can safely get off of them if monitored by a good doctor that understands nutrition, hermetic thinking, relationships, toxic environment, et cetera, et cetera. So when a drug comes marketed saying, it's the best thing in sliced bread, you have to wonder who paid for that research. And so, it all boils down to pride and greed and these basic things we hear at church on Sundays. And I'm afraid that the pharmaceutical industry, in my opinion, is highly immoral.
Well, it just seems that the whole arena, which is not just the medical arena and the educational arena, but the political arena, is just sort of polluted. What do you think, Rob?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm starting to hear my voice get a little passionate. I apologize.
Uh-oh.
These things have been a thorn in my side, a cross on my back for so long. And you know what? As I get older, I mellow out, but I can still sense a little fire there. And I guess it makes for good radio, but really, I try not to let these things bother me, because we're not going to solve them anytime soon. So, in the quietness of my private consult in Utah, I try to chip away one patient at a time, and thanks to people like you, I get to reach other people, and thanks to good publishers who have published my books, I get to reach a few more. And so we just chip away. You know what? I'm hopeful. I think things will change, but I'm afraid things will get worse before they get better. Again, these cycles of creation, destruction, not only apply to all nature and our body cells, as above, so below, but they also apply to societies. Societies come and go, revolutions. And I'm not advocating a revolution here. I'm just saying that we can have a quiet revolution like Gandhi. People are waking up. We're going through a process of destruction of these institutions that have been cemented to rip us off. I mean, there's no other way to say it. It just boggles the mind that intelligent people, highly intelligent people, can be brainwashed to believe that you can restore health through a pharmaceutical product. I mean, it's just amazing to me.
Well, we're going to get right back into this in just a couple of minutes. We have to take a break now. But, I'm saying about our whole culture, which we call democratic, then we call it a democracy. It's more like a hypnocracy, where you have so many people, quote, brainwashed, who are highly professional, highly intelligent, and that is part of the problem that we have to face. We have to learn how to get through that kind of a veil in all sorts of fields and in political life. And we'll be right back in just a minute. This is Johnny Bluestar. I've worked as a lyricist with Patricia Welch for over 5 years, along with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens, a friend and colleague. Her ability as a singer is simply amazing. She brings a unique and dramatic flair to every song she sings. Over the next few months, we shall be releasing a number of these songs, part of an album called Hadley's Castle. Meanwhile, Patricia has been busy creating a super enjoyable collection of classic standards in an exciting 46-song, 3-CD collection.
Music for great entertaining introduces Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia Welch. 3 hours of continuous music. 46 of the all-time classic standards, spanning decades of hit songs. Going to a friend's home for dinner? Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia also makes the perfect hostess gift. This 3-CD compilation is the perfect background music that sets just the right mood for any dinner party.
I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. There was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy.
To purchase this album, just go to patriciawelch.com/CD. That is patriciawelch.com/CD. You won't be disappointed.
It is the 15th century. El Tesoro de Cielo, a Spanish treasure ship, sends a scouting expedition to a strange island. Golden statues surrounding them prove the enormity of their find. Suddenly, hordes of ghoulish creatures with scaly green flesh and skeletal wings descend upon them from the sky.
What do you think of this, Rufio?
These creatures are fragile, Captain. We can take them with our swords.
They seem supernatural. Who knows what powers they possess?
Fallen angels, weakened by their treason.
My God, are you saying they're Nephilim, the devil's host?
I'm saying, whatever they are, we can take them. Do any of you cowards dare join me?
Up against sharp knife-like nails and hideous fangs, the men's swords rip into slimy green flesh. Though black blood pours copiously from their half-naked bodies, the creatures miraculously persist. Can the crew survive this bloody, cursed battle?
Find out more by Googling The Thrice Born, a new sci-fi supernatural novel by Carlos Lopez Avery and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Carlos Johnny Kendall, The Thrice Born. That's Carlos Johnny Kendall, The Thrice Born.
You know, we've been talking about in the last break about why are such intelligent people, and you cannot say that the medical doctors, the pharmaceutical industry, the medical education community, that these people are not very intelligent. They are very intelligent. And are they sinister? Are they trying to hurt us? Well, I think that somewhere in this group of people, some people probably don't care. But I think a lot of them really do care, and I think that they are actually believing that pharmaceutical products in this kind of abundance can really help people and are the road to curing people. Do you agree with that, Doctor? Are they hypnotized to that degree?
Yes, I do. You know, I up to this year, I've been a delegate for the Utah Medical Association and chairman of the Environmental Public Health Committee. And something I did for about 15 years. And I remember when I first began to open my mouth on these big convention meetings, yearly meetings, you know, I raised a few eyebrows, but they were kind to me and they would listen. Last time I went, docs were coming up to me and shaking my hand and saying, thanks for educating us and thanks for sticking to your guns. And so these are good people. Docs tend to be, and I used to be a member of the admissions committee for the Utah School of Medicine. So I had a vote on who gets to be a doctor. And I tell you, great experiences with my colleagues. You know, they are very conscious that this small revolution afoot, and it's all geared by the golden age of nutrition. So there are many highlights. I think that there are doctors who are in it for the money, but you know what? You find that in every profession. So, again, I don't want to dismiss the pharmaceutical approach at all, because you and I would need a whole lot of drugs if we get hit by a Mack truck and wind up in the ICU.
Yes, so, and of course, I wasn't trying to disparage that use of that kind of use of drugs, of pharmaceutical drugs, but when you start using those type of drugs for everything, then you have some serious health problems. Right, that's the issue right there. So I'm glad that you're aware of that, because it's a point that needs to be made when we're talking this way, because we don't want to create the impression that there's no good in the pharmaceutical approach. If you have a heart attack or a stroke, you know, I'll never forget Rush Limbaugh. After he had his heart attack, he waddled out of the emergency room proclaiming that we had the best healthcare system in the world. And you know what? He was right. When it comes to acute care, emergent care, we're the best. But when it comes to chronic diseases, we are not doing so well. A great example is the purple pill. The purple pill to block acid should be used yesterday, IV, if you're having an ulcer and you're bleeding. But when you have it over the counter to treat reflux because you're eating a lot of pizza, well, that's a problem, because you're blocking the absorption of key nutrients, B vitamins, minerals, and you're disrupting the balance of the gut flora. In fact, all those problems have been associated with osteoporosis, depression, and now heart attacks. The purple pill. You know, I would like to read something from your book again. Do you mind?
Sure, go ahead.
A shocking report came out of the International Medical News Group in April 2004. Doctors should not spend more than 5 minutes with patients, since patient satisfaction does not increase by spending any more time. Is this report accurate? I believe so. Most Americans expect their doctor to prescribe a drug, likely the one they have seen heavily advertised on TV for whatever real or imaginary ailment that brings them to the office. Patient satisfaction is assured once the doc writes the prescription. What's the point in lingering to chit-chat? A vending machine could handle this mode of practicing medicine. I think that's tragic and hilarious at the same time, isn't it?
It's all too true. Again, in discussions like this, we must be fair. A whole lot of the healthcare system is a healthcare system we deserve as a society, meaning most people, that's what they want. They don't want to change your lifestyle, so they just walk in and they want a drug. Specifically, they want they just saw advertised on TV. And so we can't lay it all at the feet of the good docs and the system itself. Even our educational system is the system we want. Everything we have in our society is a reflection of what we deserve. And that's another thing about balance and understanding spiritual issues. Even though I make noise and I get passionate and all that, I deeply understand this. I forget sometimes, but the point is, there's no need to worry and complain too much, because things are the way they need to be. And as much as we want to be activists and get out there with our posters and chants and at the Capitol building, things are the way they are for a reason. Even wars, this is hard to understand for people who are not well-grounded in spiritual thinking. Because the issue of good and evil gets tangled up, and let's go fight evil, let's do good. Yes, I understand all that, but deeply, at some point, I think it's healthy to say, Lord, thy will be done, not mine. Lord, things are the way they are, I'll accept them. And I know that it may strike some people as defeatist, but really it's not. It's quite liberating. But
I think
that's a whole discussion for another day.
I think it's within the experience of the divine presence and guidance that we should be dealing with these situations, and not just from our lower emotions of revenge, anger, and so forth. And it's hard to strike that balance sometimes, because there are things that are obviously ridiculous, but yet we can't seem to change them. And yes, we have to accept the way they are and actually realize that this is what the world is offering us to face. But still, we need to ask guidance, because we can also be moved to do something about things at the right time.
Exactly. I'm glad that you put it that way. It's a complex issue, and I don't pretend to understand it very well. I must say that in my old age, I'm pretty content with the way things are. And, it makes for great radio, though, to start rapping.
Well, I don't know. I think that there's going to have to be some changes, and I hope that those changes will be divinely guided, because millions of people are suffering horrible lifestyles and horrible ways of dying because of this disruption in the natural order.
Exactly. So I'm glad I understand the paradox of it all. It really is a bit of a paradox.
It is difficult, because you have to accept the way things are. Otherwise, that's one of the ways you have access to this other realm, by realizing that in a certain sense, everything is the way it's supposed to be. And your role in it is to try and reach that higher level of awareness.
Right. I've studied a lot of Zen and Buddhism. I lived in monasteries, and I'll never forget this one story, because the Zen people, they get into stories and koans and things like that, but it goes something like this. Young man is thought to be quite dull, not good in working with his hands. So too bad, he's sent out in the country, punishment. But he learns to ride horses. Wow, great. He comes to town riding a horse, great. He falls off a horse and breaks his leg. Oh, that's too bad. Well, war breaks out. All the healthy males are sent to war but him, because he broke his leg, etc., etc. The story goes. But to accept the divine plan by the Supreme Architect and say, thy will be done, is quite powerful, and it's something, even disease, even when we are struck ill, instead of saying, woe me and rolling over, a better attitude is say, Lord, what is it that I need to learn from this? Where's the lesson? Where's the pony under this pile?
Well, we're going to have to take a break now, but one thing I want to look forward to is there is one thing we can do. We can learn to eat right and to handle our diets properly, and that's what I'm going to I and Rod are going to investigate in the next segments, because we want to know some answers, things that people can do without protesting to Washington, but just by going into their kitchen or their supermarket and choosing wisely. So we'll be right back right after this break.
The following is from West Side Warrior, the memoir of Ray Boylan, a Korean War veteran and crime fighter. He was there fighting in the world's coldest battlefield when the Chinese communists invaded.
Desperate squad members ran past our foxhole yelling, "Get the hell out of here, there's too many of them." Again, we saw the Chinese soldiers charging in with opium-induced mindlessness, oblivious of our bullets. Again, we heard the bugles and whistles. Climbing out of our foxhole, Bob dropped 2 hand grenades behind us, and I threw one over my shoulder. Bullets whizzing by our heads, Bob and I became bolts of lightning flashing across the mountainside. Like a hideous film, desperate scenes like this played out on the Tokong Pass for 3 days. Sometimes I played in the scene. Sometimes I could only watch and wonder if it were real, or if I'd be suddenly jolted out of my trance by an RKO usher saying, "Hey, did you kids sneak in here?"
To acquire this book, Google westsidewarrior.boylan.kindle. Boylan is spelled Boylan. That's Westside Warrior, Boylan, Kindle.
Nowadays, if you are a serious business person, just getting assistance from someone with a license and a bit of experience may not be sufficient. In fact, your realtor actually needs to be knowledgeable enough to be one of your top advisors. Whether you're facilitating a giant merger or selling your company, there's a lot at stake besides your finances. There is the future value of your current investment, financial freedom, integrity, and overall reputation. If you need this kind of assistance, Sandra LaFlamme is a real estate expert with the experience, reputation, and knowledge qualified to assist you in all your key transactions. Sandra LaFlamme, real estate services with integrity and conscience. Contact her today at 888-366-8070. That's Sandra LaFlamme at 888-366-8070.
Welcome back to Threshold Radio. We're with Dr. Hugo Rodier. Doctor, your 8-week cellular detox diet, as you call it, aims to help people reverse their chronic disease. Tell us more about it.
Sure. It's pretty basic, pretty simple. Like I was telling you before, it all boils down to eating a plant-based diet to harness more energy and information, and avoiding processed foods. That's 90% of it right there. Now, the whole thing, again, is messed up because we live in a plutocracy. Government of the rich, where simple things are obfuscated to sell more. Incidentally, would you allow me to finish a couple of questions that were left unanswered from before I...
Of course. Go ahead.
Because they're related. The paleo diet thing, I did not want to create the impression that you shouldn't eat that way. There are some people who are programmed to eating that way. The same is true on the other side, vegetarians. There are people that are programmed to doing better that way. And if we're going to eat animal protein, I say eat it as organic as possible, as lean as possible. Turkey, fish, chicken over red meat any day. Vegetarians also are flawed because a whole lot of vegetarians turn to sugar. A whole lot of vegetarians are not that healthy because they're eating a lot of processed foods and sugar. So you can see that any diet can have a dark side, if you will. Then as far as the diabetes thing is concerned, when it comes to diabetes non-insulin dependent, totally 100% reversible. When you are needing insulin because your pancreas is totally dead, I'm afraid that is not reversible. So that distinction needs to be made. I can tell you, though, that by eating real well and doing all kinds of good things, exercising and supplements, you can greatly reduce the insulin you need because you're improving the reception of insulin at the cellular level. Because a whole lot of people are insulin resistant, and that's the main problem with insulin, not so much a lack of insulin, but insulin resistance. So having said that, let me answer that basic question that you posed about a basic 8-week plan. What I tell people is to start out with a fast. Fasting has been shown to be extremely healthy twice a month. The benefits of fasting are amazing, most of which are related to giving the gut a rest, because our guts are overwhelmed, leaky gut and all that. We talked about that. So by fasting for a day before they start on my program has better results. The second day I say eat a lot of grapes, and then you start. For 2 weeks, eat only lean meats, all veggies, and nuts. With a shovel, don't go hungry. The thing about limiting calories is totally flawed. No, people need to be satisfied. To go around starving all the time, limiting calories won't work. Of course, we want to be satisfied, and as we heal the brain-gut connection, we will be satisfied with less food. Because we have a lot of signals between the brain and the gut. So as we heal that connection, the brain-gut connection, people will be satisfied and full with a lot less food. So the goal really during those 2 weeks, because you're rather limited to only lean meats, veggies, and nuts, is to be satisfied, to not starve. And people start losing weight immediately, and they will see that they're not eating as much. The third and fourth week, you introduce fruit. One at a time, you become a bit of a detective. It turns out that a whole lot of people develop food allergies because they have unbalanced gut microbes. That's the problem that drives a whole lot of food allergies and food sensitivities. And so you begin to add fruit. Make it as organic as possible, this whole process. A whole lot of preservatives, chemicals in the food add to the toiling of the gut. Remember, we talked about toiling, T-O-I-L. And so we need to give the gut a rest so that you absorb better. So that's why you add food slowly. Adding fruits definitely part of this process. And then the fifth and sixth week, you begin to add legumes, peanuts, lentils, beans, soy. And then the last 2 weeks, you begin to add grains back in, whole grains. This is where a lot of people discover whether they're paleo or not, incidentally. Proof of the pudding's in the eating. So if you put grains back in, particularly wheat, and a whole lot of problems start to return, you don't feel good, and confusion or mental fogginess, then you begin to see that certain foods are not good for you. And I see a significant amount of people, numbers of people, who will react unfavorably to the grains and to wheat. So it may be paleo. Although they ought to try other grains, don't give up after trying wheat. You ought to try other grains, and there's so many out there. Because, not eating grains can be a little boring. So I don't want to condemn people not to eat grains at all. I must say, though, that in doing all this, you've got to keep in mind the glycemic index, meaning that the foods the first 2 weeks lean meats, veggies, and nuts have the least sugar and the most nutrients. So, energy and information. As you go down the list, all you're doing is adding calories, very few nutrients. So it pays to always fill up with the top, with the first 2 weeks when you return to a balanced diet. So always fill up with veggies, nuts, and lean meats, and eat fruit, legumes, and grains in moderation for fun, for variety. So you can see that in 5 minutes, one can describe a diet that is very simple, practical, and well-grounded in science.
Well, I noticed that. Go ahead. Rod?
Yes, I'm here. I didn't say anything. You go ahead, Johnny.
Okay, sorry. I found that I want to tell you an experience that I had, Doctor. I was literally probably dying of asthma. I had coughed for 6 months. I couldn't sleep anymore. I couldn't even talk because I was coughing so much. And I stumbled on a health food store where somebody recommended a change in diet. And I had been told that this was incurable by doctors and so forth. And I reluctantly tried this diet. But I want to point out that at the time that I was getting asthma, all these childhood allergies came back, like cats and carpets and all kinds of things like that. And I went on this diet, and in 3 days I could breathe again. And this diet is very similar to what you're talking about. And after that, I noticed that all these allergies that came back went away again. So can we think that some of these sensitivities, once the leaky gut situation is improved, that some of these allergies will go away? Some of
Absolutely.
these reactions to food.
I hear your story all the time, every day at my clinic. You see, the inflammation. Let's start from the beginning. Asthma is an inflammatory condition where the bronchioles, the tubes that take air to the lungs, are inflamed, right? And
Yes.
so you get inhalers to address that inflammation and the spasms that are caused by the inflammation of those tubes. Well, an intelligent person, a child, will ask why. Where's that inflammation coming from? Well, we're told that it's from pollution, from your immune system. Yes, but let's just unpackage that a little bit. It turns out that bad air out there that triggers asthma gets to you because the lining of your bronchioles are toiling, T-O-I-L, toxic, oxidized, inflamed, and lacking in adequate mitochondrial function. And so what is driving that? All that is coming from the gut. Turns out that the gut is 2/3 of your immune system, so the inflammation that eventually ends up in your arteries, your bronchioles, your joints, is coming from the gut. Okay? And so leaky gut is at play here because the lining of the gut itself is toiling, so all the inflammation generated by bad foods, toxins in the environment, are coming from the gut. So you heal leaky gut, and you do that when you eat real well, which is what we're saying, and then asthma goes away. Word of caution, never be without your inhalers, because your immune system has memory, and perhaps exposed to a certain pollutant or toxin or cat, the asthma may come back and grab you, and you don't want to be without inhalers. Having said that, I hardly ever hear that. So I just sort of, just to be safe, you don't want to be exposed to some black swan out there that can trigger your asthma again.
Well, I'm thankful for saying that I have been cured for decades now without hardly anything coming back at all.
Excellent.
But at the time, it was I was facing what I thought would be a very inappropriately premature death. Look, we're running into another break fairly soon, and I want to make sure by the end of this program, when we come back, that you can give our audience some real good contact information, how to get a hold of your books and your website and things like that. I want that to be the first thing that we discuss after the break, because we're going to have to be saying goodbye pretty soon. And this has been such a remarkable program. We want to make sure that everybody has the information they need. So we're going to go to a break now, and we'll be back soon. I've worked with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens for quite a few years, building an inventory of songs, many of which feature singer-performer Patricia Welch. We will soon be releasing these songs, components of an album and a musical in progress called Hadley's Castle. When Edgar and I first got together, I was amazed by the brilliance of his musical scores created for movies, TVs, and animations. Here is a sample of the work he did on the Russian TV series, available now on Amazon, called The Secret Agent's Memoir, which had 2 seasons. This score is called Escape and was created for the first season. I am very pleased to say that Bridge of Light Productions, a division of New Galaxy Enterprises, is proud to be the contact point for television and film companies seeking information about this amazing composer's work. If you're in the entertainment business and wish to know more, contact me at johnnybluestar@gmail.com. That's johnnybluestar@gmail.com. New Galaxy Enterprises is a media company specializing in wide-ranging content like novels, nonfiction books, screenplays, commercial advertising, web content, etc. One of our most esteemed providers is illustrator Robert W. Zalo. I work on all my most important projects like book covers, logos, web design elements with Robert. As an illustrator, he worked on the Ignatz-nominated comic book, The Expert's Guide to Killing Things That Go Bump in the Night. His skills encompass advertising, magazine illustrations, gaming, comic books, TV production, and scenic painting. His clients include Comcast, Adelphia, Haven Talent, ForceWorks, High Octane Theater, Star Creative Advertising. If you wish to contact Robert, go to johnnybluestar.com and let me know. That's johnnybluestar.com. For artist, illustrator Robert Zalo, an essential component of all the work we do. Maybe he can help you too.
Boots in Manhattan is a coming-of-age novel by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. It is about a young Tom Boots Raymond who grows up in New York in the 1940s who was a member of a street gang.
My friends and I were about to start our own game of stickball when Rabbit Lacey, the head of the Rattlers, came up to us and tried to move in on our game. We were called dwarves, the youngest members of the stupid gang.
Hey, Kevin, I need you to get some gloves and some stuff I left at my place.
No, this is our game.
Hey, are you my good little dwarf or what?
You've been calling me a dwarf since I was 6. We're not your personal slaves, pal.
Hey, what is this? A dwarf rebellion? All right, big guy. We ditched the dwarf thing. We make you guys regular rattlers.
No, it's too late.
He looked at Jay and me. We looked away. Rabbit was now angry, and he pushed Kevin hard with the palms of his hand. Kevin tried to ram him in the stomach, but he stepped aside, throwing Kevin into the curb where he fell to the ground, bleeding profusely at the knee. Still, he managed to get up.
My street.
Kevin shouted at Rabbit, pointing at him with an angry index finger.
Find out more by Googling Boots in Manhattan, a 1940s coming-of-age novel, part 1 of the novel series The Foot Soldier by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle. That's Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle.
The Dr. Rodier. Thank you, Doctor, for being with us today. We have certainly enjoyed talking with you very much, I must say that. And everything that we have discussed with you today has been of extreme value to us, and I'm sure to the audience as well. And We know that you are in the process right now of opening a new office. Perhaps you can tell us how and when prospective patients can get in touch with you and how they can find your books. And please let them know how they can experience that wonderful health lesson on your website.
Well, thank you very much. Before I go into that, let me finish this asthma thing. You know, it's quite compelling what's going on here because people just get an inhaler and they don't get educated about pollution, the sources of pollution, the politics and economics behind all that. But also they don't hear about the correlation between use of antibiotics and asthma. Turns out that if kids are given antibiotics under a year of age, their risk of asthma triples. And so you know what's going on here, I'm sure. You're messing with the gut flora, which is your immune system, which leads to the problems that we talked about in the last segment. So as far as getting a hold of my clinic, and I do phone consults as well, the best way is to go to chronicdiseasedoc.com. And then you don't have to struggle with the spelling of my name, HugoRodier.com, which is a French spelling. Having said that, you can also get my books from Amazon.com. But I make more money if you go to my website. There's a phone number there that we're taking appointments. We'll open the new clinic October 1st, and I was at another clinic up until last week. So a bit of a transition, but it should not cause any problems to anyone who would like to have a nutritional health consult.
Well, Doctor, thanks so much for being with us today. And for myself, who I just started working with you as a patient, it's been truly an enlightening experience, and it's a real privilege to meet someone whose heart is in the right place. So we're going to have to go now. I should say stay tuned, everybody, for next week for the sounds and serious concerns of songwriting team Zave Nathan and Bonnie Blazak, who will discuss their exciting and diverse music, but also some of their recent efforts to cope with the catastrophic challenges facing America and this planet. Thank you, Rod, and thank you, my wife Debbie, for their help in preparing this program. Thanks to the owners of Vegas All Net Radio, who are making radio come alive again. Particularly thanks to John Stiles, Ryan and Irma for their help, and to our board op, of course, Mike Fox, for his encouragement and help during all of the beginnings of this show. Also, I want to thank Edgar Ahrens, who did some of the musical interludes, and Patricia Welch, who joined in singing some of these songs today. And finally, I want to give tremendous credit to the great Hassan Khan, who helped me with the websites, YouTube promotions, commercials, and many other elements supporting the show. We're going to go out with a song by Patty Greer, who was on our last program, and incidentally, you're going to be able to get a hold of the entire broadcast. It's going to be up on YouTube fairly soon. This is a wonderful filmmaker, songwriter, composer, musician, and a leader in the explorations of crop circles. Hear her terrific story in our complete program. And also, I would encourage everyone to go to www.pattygreer.net and get a hold of her movies for $5. You can see some of the most original documentaries if you want to, streaming, or you can buy them very inexpensively. pattygreer.net. And now I'd like to present her song as we move along here. May peace prevail on earth.
May peace prevail on earth, and let the children sing. Magic fills the air, song.
Views and opinions expressed on this program were those of the hosts and guests and did not necessarily reflect those of Vegas All Net Radio, its affiliates, or its parent company, 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 or its